Good morning. Taxation is theft. It's 12:30 p.m. in the morning. On my way to work. So I had some interesting thoughts. I actually remembered the thing I was going to talk about a few days ago that I totally forgot about, but ran out of time anyways, so I wouldn't have been able to get to it. The whole thing with the statues. I had a new thought about that I thought was an interesting perspective, and of course, this taking this actually affects the way we vote too, I think, because we have so many rules and regulations around voting, and they're all there for kind of a good reason, even though they're terrible at doing their job. So I'll get to that in a minute. So first, let me talk about the statues, right? So we've got this thing where we have these statues, and people are like, take down the statues, and people are like, no, we should, it's part of history, and, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's the thing. If it's on private property, then it belongs to the owners, of course. Like, that's their decision. If you want, you can stand in front of their private property on public property and protest them, do whatever you want, that's fine. Boycott them. But if it's public property, it belongs to the public. And yes, it never should have been paid for with taxes. These are all the same arguments I've said before. But we should vote on whether or not the statue stays there, right? I mean, wouldn't that be the right democratic thing to do? But the problem is, who's going to vote on it? Right? Because you have, and this is where it gets into all the voting rules. Who's going to vote on it? So let's say you have, I think there was a statue in the middle of New Orleans that was taken down. So you have that statue there, and I think it was in the middle of a roundabout. Who cares about that statue? Really? Should, everybody in New Orleans vote on it? Because you have people who, maybe they live in New Orleans, but, on the north side, on the west side, on one of the sides that doesn't have the statue, and they never drive by it, and they never see it, and they don't really care. Should those people vote on it? I mean, what election would this be? Would it be the county election? Would it be the state election? And, arguably, it would be the city election, because it's arguably city property, even though public isn't really defined by that, right? Does that mean the people who work in New Orleans but live outside of New Orleans would get to vote on it, or not? What about the people who live inside New Orleans and work outside of New Orleans? What about people who have a vacation home in New Orleans? All of these rules they're very arbitrary, and we never really think about them, but imagine this. Oh, and then you have the voter fraud issue, right? What are people going to vote? Mail-in votes. They never see the statue. What do they even care? But imagine you say, okay, we're going to have a vote. We're going to have it on this day. If you care enough about this statue, either to be there or not, show up. You draw a line in the sand. Everybody stand on this side or that side, and whoever's got the most people is the side that wins. Deal with it and go home. And I know there's a flaw to that, right? Because people can say, oh, well, I really like that statue. I'm going to hire a bunch of people who don't care about the statue, but I'm going to hire them and pay them to go stand there. Yep, more election rigging. Which is going to happen anyways. But I'm just thinking, would this be a more legitimate way to determine whether or not a statue should be taken down? But then you also have an oppressed minority. Is it possible for somebody to be oppressed by a statue or by the presence of a statue? That's debatable. And if that's the case, well, then of course it doesn't matter how many people show up. It doesn't matter if you get to vote, because even if there's only 5 people there, if those 5 people are truly being oppressed by that statue, then it doesn't matter if they're outvoted. It really shouldn't be there. But again, that's debatable. We have to really figure out, is a statue oppressive? Offensive is different than oppressive, because, you know, the whole free speech thing says you have a right to be offensive. But then again, if it's government property, that is the government being offensive, and I don't think the government has the right to be offensive. I don't know. It does a pretty good job of being offensive in everything it does, so maybe. Anyways, so going back to regular old elections, right? So all this shit comes up where, oh, you have to be a resident of your district in order to be elected into that district. Which sounds like, okay, yeah, if you want us to vote for you, you have to live here. But then you again have the same thing. Okay, well, what if there's 2 people running, one of them lives here, the other one doesn't, and everybody really wants the guy who doesn't live there, so they vote for that guy. Oh, so now you're telling the people who voted that they don't get what they want because of some arbitrary rule? And then you also have to consider, okay, well, politicians violate these rules all the time by buying a vacation home in the district they want to run in. And then you have the gerrymandering where, basically one guy's in a district, that district really likes that guy, and so, but he doesn't play party politics well, so they want to get rid of him. So what do? They gerrymander him out of his own district. What does that mean? They change the shape of the district to go around the guy's house, so he is no longer in the district that votes for him. And if he wants to get elected again, he has to move. Sometimes a block. And I talked about this on the show. I had someone actually bring up a district, and we looked at this. Where was it? I want to say it was, I don't remember. But we were looking at a district where they actually did that. And, there was a straight line saying district something on this side, other district on the other side. And it was like they broke it up and said one city block was now removed from the district and put into another district. So that guy, if he ran again, would have lost if he didn't move. There's all kinds of that crap that goes on. And then, of course, you have, oh, well, where are you registered to vote? Do you actually live most of the time there? Is that just your vacation home? What's your residence? Oh, you own a business in multiple states? Well, doesn't the government affect each of your businesses? So shouldn't you have voting rights in each of those states? There's a lot of arbitrary rules that are put into place. Now, of course, if you got rid of them, yeah, there'd probably be all kinds of havoc of people just going from state to state, voting on whatever and whoever they want. Probably, voting on different senators who, because at that point you're not voting on local politics, you're voting on national politics at the local level. So you get to vote for multiple senators across different states, and that could be a bad thing. That's all possible. So I don't necessarily have the answer that I'm looking for, but I do kind of want to start that conversation of, are all of these arbitrary rules pretty freaking useless? People who are under 18 can't vote. Why? If they're... I was talking to this kid at a convention. He was 13, and he had more sense about politics than most of the people at the convention. He should be able to vote. He was complaining he wasn't able to drive. I think he would have been a good driver. This guy had a well-developed brain, unlike most drivers on the road. He should have been able to vote. Why is it the people under 18 can't vote? And this was another interesting thought that I had too, going back to like where the politician has to live in order to qualify. And this goes to the idea of, everybody's a write-in candidate, right? So there's this idea. Apparently, the original ballots in the U.S. were like this, or I'm not sure where the original ballots were, but it was always like a blank sheet of paper, and you write whatever you want. You write whoever you want to vote for, and the idea is, if you don't know who's running, you shouldn't be voting for them anyways, right? So if you don't know who's running, you don't know what office they're running for, you don't vote for them, because otherwise you're a completely uninformed, useless voter. Sorry if that offends you. But if you had a system like that, and then you had somebody who's running for your, to represent you and where you live, there's, what's that determining factor, right? If you can't ask for their address, and this is something that offends me as a person who's run many campaigns, you have to basically dox yourself. You have to put your public address. And of course, these professional politicians, they use fucking spoof addresses, right? They use like their second home that they don't live at, or, they get away with using P.O. boxes and stuff like that, which isn't really allowed, but they let it slide for the big parties and that sort of thing. So they're all faking where they're from anyways, some of them. And that offends me that I have to put my address down, because the government doesn't know where I live always. I usually avoid giving out my personal address to the government at all. Especially because I say so many things against the government. Who knows? Who knows when I'm going to piss them off? Who knows when they're going to send the SWAT team? I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe they will. So, I don't like giving out that address. And so, well, that address determines what district I'm in and blah, 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 blah. Okay, but what if the voters, instead of saying, okay, based on where I lay my head at night determines whether or not they can vote for me because I'm in their district, instead, what if it was what I have done for them and their communities, right? So you have these politicians who do absolutely fucking nothing for any community, right? And they run and they run and they run, but they're on the ballot and they have a D or an R next to their name, and people are like, okay, well, that's cool. So he's a D or an R. I don't know anything about him, but I know what parties he's with, and I'm going to vote for that. Instead, what if, and this goes back to the idea of the blank ballot, if you don't know who they are, if they haven't been active in your community, if they haven't been doing anything for you, why would you even vote for them? And this goes back to the idea, okay, maybe they live outside of your district, but they've been busting their ass to help your district out because they see a problem in your district and they want to fix it. And if the voters in that district say, oh, they painted that building. That's not what they say. If the voters in the district say, well, he might not live in our district, but he sure as hell has been helping us out over the past couple years, why shouldn't they be able to vote for that? Why don't they have the right to have that person represent them? And, again, it's not about, they're putting in more fiber optics, it looks like. It's not about, it's not about taking away your rights, right? That's not what they're trying to do. Although, I guess that could be argued that they are in some cases. What they're trying to do is prevent fraud and corruption and all this other stuff, and what they've really done is taken away our rights to vote for who we want to vote for. Same thing with ballot access, kind of, right? I mean, it's a different story. With ballot access, it's, they don't want to give us too many choices. Because if we have too many choices, we're not going to know who to pick. Well, maybe we should have 0 choices. And then we vote for the person who came to our neighborhood, who met us, who did something for us, who shows that they care enough about us to earn our vote. And we remember their names and we go write it down when we vote. Because then you don't take away anything. Instead, what they have is, let's make a ballot access thing, and we'll say, if you can't get enough signatures and you can't get enough support to be on the ballot, then you probably don't have enough support to win anyways, which is kind of the argument, which kind of makes sense. But at the same time, you have to spend all your time and money and energy collecting signatures instead of campaigning, which makes things a little bit more difficult, especially when they have deadlines and all this other shit. So what do? They've taken away your right to vote for somebody who is lesser known. They've given you only your 2 options, sometimes a little bit more. So again, they try to do something. They try to do something nice, supposedly, and they ended up taking away your rights. So, just some thoughts. Tell me what you think about them. I'll see you guys next time. Taxation is theft.